So I've seen some videos on YouTube about wool and why it's so good, but I think they miss a couple key points, and I want to go over that now. I've been wearing wool for about 15 years, and since then, I'm a firm believer in it for comfort in the woods. And I've come up with 9 pros and about 4 things that aren't so good about wool. And but I'm going to explain those too in the end. 2 of them I don't think are a really big deal. But there's no perfect garment out there, but wool comes close, and I'm going to go over those reasons why. So stay with us. And we're going to test if wool really does keep you warm when it's wet. So stay with us while I wear these pants and do this video. Okay, so I got those pants on. It's not too bad. It is 27 degrees. This is the inside temperature. I just grabbed it out of there. 27 degrees Fahrenheit out right now. I'm going to go over this stuff. These are a couple of garments that I have accumulated over the years, and from base layers until the outer layers and everything in between. So everybody's heard of wool keeping you warm when it's wet, and we're testing that now. So far, so good, but I haven't been out for very long. And it does, it keeps you warm when it's wet. And the other thing it does, it keeps you dry. So, and it does that in a couple different ways. Wool sheds water. It actually, the fibers look like a kind of a closed pine cone. They're scaly, and they actually repel liquid moisture, but they accept and attract water vapor. So like when you start sweating and stuff, it attracts that inside the fiber, and it's made of lanolin. It can hold 30% of its weight in moisture and not feel wet to your body. So when you're wearing a base layer, 30% it can hold in its weight in moisture and not feel wet, which is great because then you don't feel clammy and you stay dry. And everybody knows that you stay dry, you're going to be better off than when you're wet for staying warm. If your body is wet, that moisture will rob your body of heat a lot faster than if you stay dry. When it does get wet and it's absorbing that moisture, it actually causes a reaction, and that reaction produces heat. There's speculation on how much heat is produced, but it's science. It actually produces heat. That's probably one of the reasons why it keeps you warm when it's wet. That might have something to do with it. So it can shed moisture, liquid moisture, and it accepts water vapor, which keeps you dry, and it breathes well. I started wearing wool because when I first started hunting, I wore a lot of synthetics, and Gore-Tex was a big one. You know, everybody wanted Gore-Tex, and I bought Gore-Tex. And there is a time and a place for Gore-Tex, but I think during hunting, most of the time, wool far exceeds and excels that. For one thing, there's waterproof, and then there's breathable. There is no such thing as a waterproof, breathable material. The more waterproof it is, the less breathable it is, and the more breathable it is, the less waterproof it is. And you can find that out if you wear something that says it's really breathable. You go sit on, let's say, a wet log, or for instance, when I used to turkey hunt, I would sit on the ground with my new Gore-Tex gear. Pressure sitting on wet leaves would soak through that Gore-Tex because they tried to make it breathable. But when you do that, it's less waterproof. And there's different grades of waterproof and breathable. So like I have some Kuiu rainwear that says it's breathable, but it's really not. I mean, it's really waterproof, you know. And when you sit on something wet, you're going to stay dry. But if I went and took a, couple mile walk in 30 degrees with that gear on, I'm going to sweat. You know, there's no getting around it. So there's no such thing as a waterproof, breathable material. It's kind of one or the other. But the great thing about wool is, unless you're in a heavy, constant downpour, it will keep you dry. Like, I take walks with my dogs in the springtime and stuff, and I wear my wool when it's raining. The reason I'm taking my dogs for a walk is so I don't have to throw the tennis ball inside for an hour. I'd rather just take them for a 20-minute walk outside in the rain. But I'll actually keep dry when I take my wool off, this wool jacket, my shoulders and stuff with wearing a t-shirt, and I'll be dry. Now, that's not a sustained heavy rain, but for the most part, during hunting situations, you'll stay dry. If it's raining hard enough for me to get wet wearing wool, I'm probably not going to be hunting. So, and the great thing is, I'll stay dry from the inside too. So, and that's just as important. I mean, you could wear Gore-Tex all day long during hunting, but you're going to get moisture on your body from the inside wearing that type of synthetic material, and you won't with wool. The other great thing about wool is it's fire resistant. It won't take a spark, or, you know, you can actually pass your arm across an open flame and there will be no harm done while wearing wool. So you can stand by a fire, sparks can get on you, and it's not going to instantly burn through like a nylon or polyester type material, any type of synthetic. It's a very durable material. They actually use it for rugs. This is a wool rug. And actually, casinos, a lot of the carpet in casinos is made of wool for 3 different reasons. Number 1, it is durable. Number 2 is back to that being fire retardant. You know, there's a lot of smokers at casinos, ashing on the ground, stuff like that, and it doesn't burn the carpet. And then the 3rd reason is that it absorbs smells. So that's important for a hunter too. It's antimicrobial, so if you do sweat, it inhibits the growth of the bacteria that makes you stink. So BO and stuff, like when you're wearing a synthetic, that's going to get wet and bacteria will grow, but not on wool. That's why a lot of bushcrafters and stuff wear wool, is because when they're out in the bush for multiple days and they're wearing wool, they can get away with not bathing and washing their clothes and still not stink. So that's a great reason for hunters. It's also for those who have problems, it's hypoallergenic too. So you can wear it against your skin with no problems there. And then for hunters, it's quiet. There's no material more quiet than wool. When you are walking and your legs are brushing against each other, or you're brushing against trees and limbs and stuff like that, it's a very quiet material. So it's great for still hunting. Also with hunting, it's non-reflective. It's a very matte finish. So it's good for camouflage as well. Another thing that wool does that a lot of people don't know is it's actually, crazy as it sounds, it's self-cleaning. So how it does that is when you hang your wool up outside on a humid day or it's wet and you hang it out, it actually, the fibers expand and contract. And when they're doing that, they're rubbing together and they actually break up that dirt and grime and oils and stuff that's on the garment itself. And when it's rubbing together, it breaks those up, and then you can just brush them off. That's a way to clean your wool, is actually to take like a boar brush and brush it off. Just slough off that material, that dirt. So we've went through all the reasons why it's good. It'll keep you warm when it's wet. It's a very breathable material. It'll shed liquid water off. It's fire retardant. It's a durable material. It's antimicrobial and hypoallergenic. It's super quiet, and it's non-reflective. Now, there's 4 not so good things about wool, and I'm going to touch on the first 2 that I don't think are a big deal. And one of them is the weight and bulk. It's a heavier material, so like fleeces and synthetics and stuff like that are very light. But I think you'll find that you don't have to wear as many layers with wool because it keeps you comfortable in the widest range of temperatures and conditions than those other synthetic materials. So instead of when you start getting overheated, you have to drop layers and pack them away. With wool, you can keep those layers on because you're still going to be comfortable. You don't need to drop those layers as often or put layers back on. You can just wear the wool that's on your body and be comfortable. It is bulky though. When you start like, I hunt a lot, and when you start sitting for long periods of time in temperatures below 20 degrees, you can wear your base layer, you can wear a mid layer or two, and then you have an outside jacket. You do get a little bulky, and it's harder to move for bow hunting and stuff like that. So what I like to do is I just pack a down jacket with me. So like I'll wear a base layer, one mid layer, and then my outer layer of wool. And then when I get to the stand and start cooling down after I chill down, I'll take this jacket off, put on my down, and then put this on top. That way I still stay quiet with the outer layer of wool. I'm still breathable with the inner layers of wool, and then I have pretty much the best insulation there is down. You can't really improve upon nature. Down is the best insulation, and wool is probably the best material there is for inner and outer garments. So I don't think the weight of wool is such an issue. The other thing that wool, some will say, misses on is the price. And wool can be expensive. The base layers aren't too bad. A lot of the Under Armour type base layers are about comparable to the wool prices of base layers. This is minus 33 degree base layer. And again, some of the synthetics are really raising in prices too, like Sitka and Kuiu companies. You're going to expect to pay $300-400 for a jacket. Well, that's comparable to wool. And I think wool outperforms those synthetic materials hands down. This jacket was around that $350 price. This is a Filson Mackinac Cruiser. Great jacket for hunting. It's got a lot of pockets. It's got a back pocket also where you can keep your lunch or snacks and stuff in, which is nice. Wool Power, it's a nice mid layer or base layer, and these run about $200 for the jackets. This is a thicker version, a full jacket mid layer. This is a vest. I believe that was 200 something. And upwards of, this is probably my priciest piece of wool I own. It's King of the Mountain pants, and I believe these were in the $400 range. But the caveat to that is wool lasts. It's a durable material, and you're going to have it for a long time. I have a pair of, it's actually not a great wool. They're Colombian. They're a recycled wool pant that I've been wearing since just out of high school. So almost 20 years I have the same pair of pants, and I'm still wearing them. I've had these for about, I'd say 8 years. Yeah, probably about 8, actually closer to 10 years. And I mean, they're good as new. No problems at all with them. The attention to detail on a higher end pair of pants too, it's going to last you longer. The zippers, the buttons, you know, all that stuff is better stitched and stuff like that. So it's going to last a longer amount of time than the other cheaper wools out there. So I think when you take in that account, if you're going to buy a higher end synthetic material or go with wool, the cost is about the same. The other thing that's bad about wool, depending on where you hunt or, you know, tromp through the woods where you camp and stuff like that, wool will grab burrs. I mean, it's kind of like a Velcro. You know, if you're going through fallow fields and stuff like that, and there's a lot of burdock and stuff like that, it's going to get stuck in the clothing. So if you regularly hunt those areas, maybe wool's not the best outer layer for you, but definitely an inner layer would still work. I don't have that problem. I hunt in the big woods of northern Wisconsin, so I don't run into a lot of stuff. Sometimes some briars, like raspberry sticks and stuff, will stick to it, but those easily come off. The biggest thing I think where wool misses is wind. Wind will blow through wool. Anything over about I'd say a 15-20 mile an hour wind, and you know, you're going to want a shell over the top, a windproof layer over the top of your wool. You can layer with wool, but then you got the weight and the bulk. You know, if you have 4 layers of wool on, it's probably best just to have, you know, 2 or 3 and then put a windproof layer on. So when I stand hunt during season, I'll put on a windproof vest, and that dramatically increases my warmth sitting on stand in windy conditions. So I think that's the biggest minus when it comes to wool is with wind. And then with rain, a heavy downpour, you know, you're not going to want to wear a wool top if you're going to be all day in the rain. You're going to want to wear a waterproof shell. That kind of goes without saying. It's not completely 100% waterproof, but the majority of the time it's going to keep you dry for the amount of time you're outside and the amount of rain most people are in outside. When it's a heavy downpour, you're going to want to wear a waterproof material over the top. So that's about it. What I have in front of us, I have a minus 33 base layer. Merino wool is a very soft wool, and you can wear it against the skin. It doesn't scratch, it doesn't, you know, itch or irritate the skin at all. That's because it is a very thin fiber. The sheep that they use, their fleece, they call it, is very thin, and it doesn't poke the skin. If you were to wear this against the skin, this is a thicker wool, and it actually pokes into the skin, and that's what causes the irritation and the itch. As long as you wear a merino wool base layer, then you don't have to worry about the scratchiness of wool. Now this is mid-layer. You can wear this against your skin too. This is a very thick mid-layer sweater. This is a little slightly less thick wool. These are both from Wool Power. They actually have a very open weave, so it traps a lot of dead air space. So it's a good insulative type weave. And you can change the weave of your wool to get you know, different benefits. This is good for a mid layer and traps a lot of dead airspace. This is better for an outer layer because it sheds moisture better. This is just a wool rich sweater. I don't even think it's 100% wool. It's probably 80-20, something like that. This is a sweater that was knit in Ecuador, and this is 100% wool. I wear this a lot of time in the winter when I'm working and stuff, because I only need one mid layer over a t-shirt and then a heavy coat, and I'm good to go all day. If I start getting hot, I'll take the heavy coat off, still stay warm and dry with that. And then you have these pants and this jacket. They're a good outer layer. I wear this all the time during bow and gun season. I regularly just wear the base layer and then these wool pants, and that'll get me into the teens easily, even in the single digits, as long as it's not too windy again. So if you're gonna buy something wool and try it out, jacket, I would recommend not getting anything with a liner in it. Any type of lining kind of negates the purpose of wearing wool. So if you get a jacket with a flannel lining, that flannel lining is going to kill that wool. When you get wet or when you start sweating, you're not going to get the benefits of what wool will give you. I wouldn't get anything with a lining. I know Cabela's makes some wool products that have like a Dry Plus windproof lining. I wouldn't bother buying those. I would just get a regular wool jacket, no lining, and then if you need that windproof layer, you buy a vest separately. That way you still get the benefits of that wool. If you have a windproof layer underneath this, you're going to, again, you're going to sweat, you're going to get wet from the inside out, and you don't want to do that. So to get the most benefit out of wool, you want to be dressed in all wool. You want your base layer to be wool, you want your mid layer to be wool, and you want your outer layer to be wool, if you need that many layers. A couple examples of recently I was hunting and I had to still hunt. I still hunted from my cabin about a mile back into the woods, and it took me about 5-6 hours, I believe. And then I had to walk back on a logging road. And I told my wife I was going to be home at dark. So when I got to the end of my hunting spot, it was about 3:30. So I had 1 hour to get back to the house. So I had to, start walking at a pretty good pace to get back, so she wasn't worried about me, and then started looking for me. And she probably would have went back in the woods here, and I'm coming back on the logging road. So I had to walk quickly back to the house, and I had enough wool layers on to keep me warm while I still hunted in the beginning, but I had to walk pretty quickly back home, and I started getting warm. But even wearing this base layer and these Filson pants, I never began to sweat during that entire time. The temperatures were hovering in the upper 20s, lower 30s. So that's an example of wool keeping you dry. If I was wearing a synthetic, I would have been sweating pretty bad. So, which can be dangerous in some situations. That wasn't one of them. I was going to get home no problem, but I stayed more comfortable because of the wool. I wear wool all the time. I wear it when I'm working almost on a daily basis out in the wintertime. I work in the trades, an electrician, and about half the time we're outside. So I regularly wear wool for my base layer because, during the day I might be working in single digits or even below zero, wiring a house, and then in a few hours a customer will call and I'll have to go there and fix something, and I'll be there for 3 hours. So I went from single digits to a house with an old lady that she's got the temp up to 80 degrees, and wool will keep you comfortable in those types of situations. I don't sweat as bad. I used to wear polypropylene, the military base layer, and when I would get called to a service call, I would start sweating up really bad, and it's not something that I can, go outside in their driveway and change my clothes or take off a layer. So I like to wear wool when I'm working, and even around here with all my projects, I'm always wearing wool in the wintertime to keep me more comfortable and dry from the inside out. As far as me, I'm still warm. My legs are warm. When I'm moving, I can feel, a little bit of that cold, but actually, after talking for probably a half an hour now, it's starting to dry. So, no worse for wear, and my legs aren't cold. And you can see I got a dry hand. You can see it's still wet. So in the end, my advice is to ditch the synthetics and start wearing wool. You're going to be more comfortable in a wider range of temperatures and conditions. Maybe keep a windproof layer handy for when the winds get above 15-20 miles an hour. Possibly a down layer if you're sitting for long periods of time, so you don't have to be so bulky with multiple layers of wool, in the single digits, stuff like that. And then if it's downpouring, have a rain shell. But next to skin, mid layers, wool is far and away the best material, and most of the time wool excels as being an outer layer too. Outperform the synthetics most of the time.